Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating structural blueprint that literally holds up one of the most massive national systems in the entire world. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of India for a second. Organizing anything on a national level there is a monumental task. The numbers alone are just staggering. But when we're talking about higher education, the very engine shaping the minds that will drive the nation and the global economy, that underlying framework has to be incredibly robust. It honestly has to be an architectural marvel just to keep everything standing. Okay, so let's put this incredible scale into perspective. Try to wrap your head around the mouth of this shift. How do you build a system that explodes from just a handful of universities back in 1947 into an absolute global giant today? We're talking about accommodating tens of millions of students across thousands of institutions. And here's the real kicker. How do you pull that off without the whole thing just collapsing under its own weight? Honestly, a fragile system would have fractured decades ago. To support that kind of mind-bending exponential growth, you need a meticulously designed structure. You need a framework that can scale endlessly without losing its core integrity. So here's our blueprint for today's explainer. First, we'll look at a massive educational transformation. Second, policies, which act as the system's blueprint. Third, governance, covering standards and oversight. Fourth, administration and execution on the ground. And finally, we'll see this triad in action. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, a massive educational transformation. The crucial thing to understand here is that when you're dealing with millions of students spanning totally different geographies, languages, and socioeconomic backgrounds, you absolutely need a highly organized structural backbone. And this backbone has to ensure three critical things at once: access, quality, and accountability. You really can't just have one or two of these working in isolation. Think about it. If you've got incredible access but zero quality, well, the education is pretty much meaningless, right? It doesn't prepare anyone for the real world. On the flip side, if you have elite quality but no access, the system becomes completely elitist, serving only a privileged few. And without accountability tying the whole shebang together, the system just falls apart entirely. This backbone is the critical support system holding those three pillars together, making sure that rapid expansion doesn't come at the cost of excellence. Moving right along to Section 2, policies, the system's blueprint. To really get how this works, we need to look at the very first pillar of our triad, policies. These act as the foundational blueprint for the entire system. Let's trace how these blueprints evolved, starting right at the beginning. You can follow this journey all the way from the first University Education Commission back in 1948 and 49, right after independence when the nation was really just finding its footing. From there, we hit the UGC Act in 1956, which started structuring the funding and standards. Then, you see this wave of national policies on education sweeping through the decades, 1968, 1986, with a revision in 1992, each one adapting to a totally new era. And finally, we arrive at the massive, transformative National Education Policy of 2020, which is fundamentally reshaping the landscape as we speak. So, this isn't just a dry list of historical dates. It's a living, breathing document of a nation's ambition over more than 70 years. Now, you might be wondering, why did these policies keep needing updates? Well, because the country itself was going through radical transformations. Each of these policy shifts intimately reflects the changing priorities of the nation. They started out focused on early post-independence nation building, literally just the sheer necessity of getting the foundation set and creating a literate populace. Then, the focus shifted heavily to equity, making sure things were fair and bringing marginalized communities into the fold. As the economy began opening up, that naturally evolved into modernization and liberalization. And today, the focus has completely pivoted toward global competitiveness, ensuring students can compete on a worldwide stage. The blueprint has to continually change because the building's purpose keeps expanding with the times. Okay, on to Section 3, governance, standards, and oversight. But look, a blueprint is just a piece of paper without structural engineers to actually enforce it, right? And that's exactly where governance steps in. Governance provides rigorous oversight by connecting local, regional institutions to those sweeping, ambitious national frameworks we just talked about. It is literally the glue holding the local and the national together. This happens through specific regulatory bodies, along with various state councils and boards, making absolutely sure that everyone, no matter what state, city, or rural region they're in, is building to the exact same code and maintaining a unified standard of excellence. This complex network forms what's basically an alphabet soup of regulatory bodies. But don't let the acronyms fool you. Each one has a highly specific, vital mandate. You've got the UGC, handling university grants and overarching academic standards. Then there's the AICTE, completely focused on managing the vast landscape of technical education. You also have the NCTE, strictly dedicated to teacher education, making sure the educators themselves are prepared. And of course, the NMC, which replaced the old Medical Council of India, overseeing the critical field of medical education. Their job is so important. They aren't just sitting in offices. They define the core standards, accredit the universities, and relentlessly monitor compliance across their highly specialized sectors. They're essentially the rigorous inspectors on the construction site, making absolutely sure everything is up to spec. Let's move to Section 4, Administration, Execution on Ground, which leads us to the people actually swinging the hammers and pouring the concrete. This third pillar acts as the building managers of our whole architectural metaphor, the administration. Administration operates at multiple, distinct levels to actually get things done, and responsibilities are split very cleanly to avoid utter chaos. Down at the institutional level, representing the on-the-ground, day-to-day reality, you have vice-chancellors, senates, and syndicates. They're actively overseeing the granular details of academic and financial management. Meanwhile, if you zoom out to the national level, the Ministry of Education acts as the grand coordinator. They handle the massive funding distributions, push high-level policy implementation, and strategically manage international collaboration. Ultimately, what you should take away from this is that administration is the physical engine translating abstract, lofty policy into tangible practice. And let me tell you, it is an incredibly delicate balancing act. On one hand, you absolutely have to give these local universities the autonomy they need to teach effectively, to innovate, and to adapt to their specific students. If you micromanage them, they just stagnate. But on the other hand, you have to maintain strict, unyielding accountability to the national standards, so the degrees actually hold real value. Administration is basically a constant tightrope walk between freedom and compliance. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the triad in action. So how do these three distinct components, policies, governance, and administration, actually work together to manage one of the biggest student populations on planet Earth? Well, it functions as a perfect sequence, like a beautifully harmonious machine. Step 1. Policies provide the high-level direction, pointing the national compass toward ultimate goals, whether that's global competitiveness or deeper equity. Step 2. Governance steps in to ensure rigorous oversight, laying down the non-negotiable rules and meticulously checking the standards. And finally, Step 3, administration delivers the execution on the ground, carefully balancing that crucial autonomy and accountability to make it all happen in real classrooms, with real educators and real students. It's exactly this structural triad that allowed the massive scaling of India's higher education system to actually happen successfully. It didn't just grow recklessly, it grew with deliberate purpose and structure. And this is why this matters so much to us. Without this interconnected system, the entire educational apparatus would have fractured decades ago under the sheer pressure of millions of new students. Instead, this precise balance has kept the system agile enough to expand exponentially, all while continuously adapting to rapidly shifting global technological trends and incredibly pressing domestic economic needs. Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought to ponder. We've seen how this incredible blueprint has successfully evolved from 1947 to today, managing unprecedented growth. But as the world of learning changes at lightning speed, we're talking about artificial intelligence, remote learning ecosystems, and entirely new industries popping up almost overnight. Is this historical architecture truly ready to support the next era of global education? Can this tried and true triad evolve fast enough to build the future? It's a massive structural challenge and definitely one worth watching. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how the complex systems around us are built.